Now, I believe joining us from Washington are three senators who had to be at the Capitol this evening for an important vote. It was out of their control. They wanted to be here, but we're happy to have them joining us by satellite. And I believe we are joined by our senators. And we're just going to start with Senator Rand Paul. Senator, good evening. Running for president in 1952, General Dwight Eisenhower famously said, "I shall go to Korea." If you're elected president, Senator, name the first foreign spot nation you will travel to.
Well, first of all, thanks for letting us appear remotely. I've been leading the fight for the last 2 weeks to defund Obamacare, and I was lucky enough to get a vote on that this evening. You know, I think it's important that we do engage with the world. So I think it's very important that even though China is sometimes our adversary, Russia is sometimes our adversary, that we do interact with these once great superpowers and emerging superpowers. And so I would say either China or Russia.
Senator, how would you lessen college debt for millions of Americans?
Well, I have a plan that would make it deductible. Right now, there are limitations. Certain families can't deduct it because of their income, and certain families are prescribed by the time. So I would say your interest and your principal ought to be deducted over your entire working career. Essentially, college is a working expense, and so I would let you deduct it as a working expense over and throughout your entire working career. And I think this makes more sense than the president who just says, hey, it's going to be free. There's no free lunch. You can't just offer free education. But I think tying it to work and making it deductible is a good idea.
Senator Paul, should an American citizen found to be fighting with ISIS have their U.S. citizenship revoked?
Yes, and in fact, you really don't have any rights if you're in the battlefield. If you're aiming a gun at one of our soldiers, it's not like you get due process. And some people confuse this because I fought long and hard and filibustered for over 13 hours to say that non-combatants do have rights and shouldn't be killed without due process. But those who are involved in combat really don't get due process and will be shot if they're fighting against America. But it is important to know that American citizens here do get due process. We do get the Bill of Rights. And the danger we've had in the past is when we've grouped people like Japanese Americans together and incarcerated them, or what we did to African Americans pre-civil rights days. So we do have to be very important that we individualize suspicion and that we not collect everyone's phone records all the time without suspicion. So I'm glad we've ended the president's illegal phone program, and I think this is a better protection of the Fourth Amendment and the right to privacy. And I am the one candidate who will do that. I'm the one candidate who has stood up to the president and say, no more, we're not going to let you collect our phone records indiscriminately with a generalized warrant.
Well, Senator, let me follow up then and ask you, what private information should the government collect from individuals to guarantee homeland security? Where do you draw the line?
Well, I think we should collect more information on terrorists, but less information on innocent individuals. We have a way now to get information. It's called the Fourth Amendment. You have to individualize suspicion. And actually, most of the times we've been attacked, we actually have had tips, and we just didn't follow through on them. The 17th or the 19th hijacker, Moussaoui, we had information and we failed to get a warrant. It wasn't that a warrant was denied. The Boston bomber, we had information, we failed to pursue it. Same way with Fort Hood massacre, had information and failed to pursue it. I think we can catch terrorists if we get more information on terrorists, but there's no evidence. There's 3 bipartisan commissions that say, you know what? The information we're capturing indiscriminately on all Americans hadn't caught any terrorists. It hasn't made us safer, but it has damaged our Bill of Rights, and it has damaged our right to privacy.
Senator Paul, but are you concerned that it might take some time in a terrorist situation with ICE or police or federal agents to stop a bomb going off if you have to get that warrant?
There are always imminent circumstances in which things can happen. If someone's screaming from a building, you don't stop to get a warrant. It's the same way with the bomb. So there have always been exigent circumstances. But for the most part, you do need to get a warrant. And the real question we've had is about collecting all Americans' phone records all the time. Is that a good idea, or is that a breach of our Fourth Amendment right to privacy? I think most of America agrees with me that the president went too far. This is a president who investigated Tea Party groups, has used the IRS to go after conservative groups. So I think it's really not a good idea to trust this president with our records. I'm glad that I stood up on principle and stood for 10.5 hours on the Senate floor to say enough's enough. The president shouldn't be collecting all these records. We can catch terrorists, but do it in a targeted fashion and do more collection of information on terrorists, just less on innocent Americans.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Paul, your father, we still have our senators in Washington, I believe. Your father was well known in New Hampshire in the early state senator. He campaigned quite a bit in New Hampshire. In fact, last time, I believe he came in second to Mitt Romney. Libertarian, contrarian, some would call your dad. How do you define your political philosophy and what drives you as a senator and a possible president?
Well, I'm a constitutional conservative. I believe the government ought to leave the individual alone for the most part. I think the states ought to be left alone. I think really the only powers given to government were enumerated in the Constitution, and all the rest of the rights are left to the people. I think that war should be seen as the last resort, not the first resort. That's what Reagan believed. Reagan is seen as a great president who defended this country. I'll do whatever it takes to defend the country, but I'm not eager for war, and I will always look very judiciously and in a very personal way as to whether we go to war. I know a young man who lost both arms and a leg, and I don't think we should just go to war as if it were a game of risk. I'll look at war as something that we have to do on occasion, but what I would say is that it shouldn't be the first resort. It should always be the last resort.
And Senator, before we let you go, we're actually going to give you 30 seconds now for anything you want to say to the voters in New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina, and our national audience.
Well, I'm a different kind of Republican. I think we need a new GOP. I'm a Republican who actually is leading Hillary Clinton in 5 states won by President Obama. Why? Because I have been going places Republicans haven't been in years. I've been to Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, Ferguson, with a message that liberty, low taxes will help poverty, will help joblessness, and that a low tax, a low flat rate will bring jobs back, and that if we get rid of the regulations, America will be great again. And I think this message is resonating. I've also been for criminal justice reform. I think we've locked up way too many poor kids, and what we need to do is have justice where everybody's treated the same under the law. And I think if we did that, we'll win the independent vote again and win. I'm the only Republican leading Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania, and it's because I am different. So I embrace the fact that I'm different than the other candidates, but we haven't been winning. And if we try the same thing over again, we're not going to win. So I am one who will put forward a plan and a message that is distinct.
Thank you, Senator.